Hi, this is Clay Daniel with Clayborne LSAT. I have a logical reasoning explainer video for you to discuss completion questions, those where you fill in the blank. Not a super common question type on LSAT logical reasoning, but you'll probably see it about once per logical reasoning section. So let's take a look at test number 71. At this point, you'll want to pause the video and go to your LawHub account for 71, section 3, number 5. That's one of the free tests that is available on your LawHub account, even without the LSAC Prep Plus upgrade. So test 71, section 3, number 5. The blank in the argument here, the stimulus, is a dead giveaway that this is a completion question. And the strategy for that is implied by the blank. You should try to fill in the blank. But it's similar to inference questions more generally, like most strongly supported, in that we need to gather the information first. We're not here in any way evaluating somebody else's conclusion. We're not trying to poke holes in an argument. It's a different task in that sense from many other LSAT questions. We simply want to understand how the argument is proceeding, and especially in this case, finish it out, because the blank is preceded by the word therefore. So let's take a look at that progress. It mentions what some believe, that advertising is a bad thing. It manipulates people. It changes their preferences. Then we have a very important transition word, however, and a comparison that with music and art appreciation, those movements or classes or whatever also change people's preferences. And there's nothing wrong with these kinds of classes, it says. So if you kind of follow that logic there, you probably see where this is going, especially because of the however. We see that the author disagrees that advertising is at least always socially pernicious. By making a comparison, we get the idea that changing people's preferences isn't necessarily a bad thing. Notice that I keep using the word necessarily. I'm qualifying my prediction of what goes in the blank. That's really important because these kinds of questions, completion questions, are going to lean heavily toward a more modest kind of language in the answers. It would be wrong to say that this argument could conclude, therefore, advertising is never socially pernicious, or that the people in the first sentence are always, always, always wrong about that. We don't have enough evidence to say that. We simply have enough evidence to doubt that advertising is always pernicious in this way. We're looking at exceptions. We're looking at a modest claim that advertising might actually be okay, or it might, at least in the sense that it changes people's preferences, it may not be bad. The language I'm using sounds a whole lot like choice C. That's nice and modestly worded because it simply says this fact about changing preferences does not establish that advertising is bad. It doesn't go too far. Now, there are some other choices that might be tempting. I think E especially. It is not completely accurate, nice and modest, seems to be disagreeing, but it isn't quite right because the argument isn't disagreeing that it changes people's preferences. It's accepting that it changes people's preferences and saying, does that make it bad? Yes or no? That's the difference. D might be tempting, but it goes too far because the argument never says that advertising changes things in a positive way, but simply that, hey, changing people's preferences doesn't have to be a bad thing. B is way too negative about advertising, and A is kind of irrelevantly goes outside the scope to mention, what would happen to consumers if these things weren't advertised. That's not where the argument is going in responding to this claim about advertising. So in sum, if you have a fill in the blank, go ahead and complete the argument yourself in your mind. But in doing so, make sure to keep your plugged-in answer kind of general enough and also typically modest enough that it helps you recognize the correct answer. If you get really narrow and specific or state things too boldly with words like always or never, you're probably going to overlook the right answer, because rarely can we plug in something as bold as those kinds of answers. So that's how you approach completion questions related to inference questions more broadly, statement-based in the sense that we're reading statements and in a sense drawing our own conclusion rather than evaluating somebody else's. Feel free to check out other videos on logical reasoning and let us know how Clayborne can help you with the LSAT.